From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Law Talk.
This week, I was out of the studio. I had to go pick up a new puppy. But Skip and Mike had things well in hand with surprise guests Kathleen, LaBonte, and Steve Forster from Henniker. We also had Executive Council member and candidate for governor Chis Sununu on the show. Skip didn't have my laptop, so all the music and promos have been added post-production. Thankfully, he took some breaks. Not always the same breaks we usually take, so there was some creative editing, but all the content is there for you to enjoy. Stay tuned, Grok Talk starts in just a few minutes.
Grok Talk.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Steve McDonald here. You ever notice how Democrats like to create problems so they can then claim to solve them? Take Medicaid expansion, for example. Even if the federal government keeps its promise to New Hampshire to pay for most of it, it'll still cost New Hampshire taxpayers tens of millions of dollars more to provide inferior care and coverage to people who, for the most part, would never have needed it if Democrats hadn't reformed health care in the first place. That's right, that real expensive reform that doesn't care if it's only affordable if you act like you don't need insurance. Well, its number one claim to fame at this point is how many more people it forced onto Medicaid. And that's only because Obamacare kicks tens of millions of people off the plan they liked and were told they could keep but couldn't. So Medicaid expansion was always part of Obamacare for a reason. Democrats knew all along that the Affordable Care Act was unaffordable and they'd need to make Medicaid bigger and more expensive. So when people got their plan kicked to the health care curb, they could still sign up for something, even if it was something as crappy as Medicaid. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Grok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Steve McDonald here. You want proof that Democrats are evil? Well, just look at the Democrats' Obamacare contraceptive mandate. Federal government trying to force religious organizations like Little Sisters of the Poor and Priests for Life to make chemical abortions administratively available to any woman who works for them, even though it violates their religious conscience and they consider it to be murder. At the same time, the Obama administration has provided, without much if any fight, the very same exemptions these religious groups want to organizations like Visa, Pepsi, and even Exxon. Religious groups have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to take their case to the Supreme Court, and Exxon gets a pass. That's right, a big evil oil company gets an exemption, and Democrats don't even like them. Like I said, Democrats are evil. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Grok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Now, it is true that there are a bunch of lobbyists and a bunch of Democrats in this state spending millions of dollars trying to convince the people of Iowa that I somehow oppose ethanol. It's not true. I have introduced legislation that would phase out the ethanol mandate over 5 years, but that is in the context of having no mandates whatsoever for anyone. And I would note there's a much more important government regulation to ethanol, and that's the EPA's blend wall that makes it illegal to sell mid-level blends of ethanol and gasoline. I will tear down the EPA's blend wall, which will enable ethanol to expand its market share by up to 60%, all without mandates, all without any government mandates whatsoever through the marketplace. And I'll note finally, Chris, there is a reason that Iowa's Congressman Steve King, perhaps the fiercest defender of farmers in this state, is chairing my campaign, because he understands that I'm committed to a fair and level playing field for every energy source without lobbyists and without Washington picking winners and losers.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteGrok.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
We are back. We are Grok Talk, and we're just going to be a free-form type of day. I promised that we were going to have a couple of drop-in guests, and indeed we certainly have. Mike, this is what happens when we put out the word, come on in, people come on in. So I want to say hello to Steve
Good morning.
Forster.
Good morning. Yeah, I bend it away a tiny bit, Steve. That should be about right there. Okay.
Right. And hopefully
Kathleen
LaBonte. No, I was hoping to get the right mic here. So,
okay,
thanks for joining in. And, Steve, I did read the news, and congratulations. This has been how many years that you've been fighting to be able to basically do with your land with what you want to be able to do?
It's been 4 years of and I have a letter here that I wrote that a lot of people have been asking me to explain what happened. And I'll just read the first thing off of that letter. And it's been 4 years for me and the taxpayer wasted. All right, and all this has been is an expensive, very expensive exercise in English composition. That's all. That's what it was. That's what it is. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, the backstory is for listeners that haven't been following Granite Grok, because we have put up quite a bit, although, Kathleen, I haven't put up that last bit that you sent me. I've got it flagged, and like everything else, sieve for memory here keeps skipping over it. Basically, you own a tree farm out in Henniker.
Yes, sir.
And for years you've been holding weddings and other types of things on your farm to help supplement the income, because I know farming is really, really hard. We've got a similar case in Guilford going on with folks that, my sons used to work for. And the abutters to your farm, who are developers, they've got their own agenda, decided to complain, and they basically shut you down. You went all the way to the Supreme Court, they shut you down, and now your friends in the legislation, oh gosh, here we go. It's Monday on Saturday morning, folks. Legislature have basically said we're going to redo the definition where all of this foo-for-all came from, but also in the town of Henniker, you had people redo the ordinances, and now you're back in business. I read last night or the night before that the selectmen have said, go for it.
Well, it's not the selectmen; it was the planning board.
Planning board,
and
okay.
It should have been the selectmen that said this, but they have never ever been involved with this as they should be, as part of their fiduciary duties to the citizens that voted them in. They never were involved in it. And that's one of the issues we have with the town of Henniker is their lack of involvement into this situation. Nobody ever said anything to me or came to my farm or asked me what I've been doing. I'll give you a brief history of what happened on my property. I purchased this property over 40 years ago. And everybody has a business plan in mind in their life. And my plan was a long-term business plan to last me the rest of my life. And I took this piece of property and cultivated it and developed it based on into a Christmas tree farm based on the University of New Hampshire's Extension Service recommendation to grow Christmas trees because we couldn't grow anything else up there. It's just a very bony piece of property. It's not fertile or anything, but it's perfect for Christmas trees, and that's what we did. And so my intent was always to every year expand it, go further and further into it, make it larger and larger, and have ultimately multiple streams of income in that plan, and which we did, and I continued on. And it was not until these developers about 7 years ago purchased or subdivided this property that all of a sudden all this action is taking place, and we are where we are today as a result of that. And I believe, there has to be a balance between, the locals the economic experience that I have to endure, and also protecting the land. And I try to protect the land, and I want to be able to pass it on to the next generation so other people can enjoy it. But I know there's a balance between the people that are around me, example, noise and so forth, and traffic and everything like that. And we found that. We have that, and we've exercised that from the moment we started my business, which was pre-zoning regulations, which the town totally discounted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems to be the way that other people come in and decide, we're going to tell you what you can and cannot do with your land, regardless of how long you've been here. We had that same situation in Guilford, where the Ames Farm has been a business for a couple of 100 years, sort of a B&B, and then they expanded. They've got docks and boats and stuff like that. And this was a few years ago. This carpetbagger lawyer came in and decided that, well, I don't like the noise. I'm going to redo the zoning that basically would put them out of business. Mm-hmm. And it became a big topic. And it wasn't until that town meeting, the lawyer standing up and yeah. And I said, I've had enough of this. So I got up to the mic. Mm-hmm. And I called on the planner, and I basically asked one simple little question. If this change to the zoning goes through, will this materially put the Ames Farm out of business? And deer in headlights from the planner. And he said, yes. The town people basically just threw the lawyer's amendment to the zoning out the door. And it's these kind of people, the simple example is, oh, I'm tired of listening to all the planes because my house is in the landing pattern. Well, the airport,
you bought it.
Yeah, the airport's been there for 50 years. You just moved in. You didn't do your homework. Too bad. And it's
like all the people that complained about Seabrook and left us with huge stranded costs. But it's worse than that. The most egregious example, I think, of that phenomenon, Skip, I observed when I was in Massachusetts. I lived in southern Massachusetts for about 13 years, and I wasn't anywhere near any of this stuff. But I noticed in my trips to the coast, to Plymouth, that there were areas that you passed through that were less developed. There were areas where houses were being built very cheaply. Why very cheap? Well, aside from the neighborhoods too near to Brockton, which became a little bit of a pit, the real reason that stuff was cheap was because it was within a small radius of the infamous concrete sugar cube on the coast there, the Plymouth nuclear station. And lo and behold, the houses are cheap, people buy the houses, and then you get a hue and cry from the lawyer class saying, there's not enough evacuation routes. We don't have an evacuation plan. We're in danger here. You bought the house because it was cheap, dummy.
Yeah. So, anyways, back to you, Steve.
Well, the intent of the whole thing in my business plan was to, when I retired, was to continue that and sustain me to be able to produce, to pay its taxes on the land, to provide me with a living, to pay the mortgage, to put food on my table. And that's why we developed it into what it is now. I mean, I was doing agritourism before agritourism became the 21st century word. 40 years ago I started this, and it was not an easy task. As we sit here today, I have 3,000 seedlings that are sitting to be planted. Yesterday I planted 300 of them. And it's not easy being a Christmas tree farmer, and everybody thinks it is. And we make a lot of money. That product that I put in the ground today will not be ready for commercial sale for 8 years. I'll be 81 years old when that comes to fruition. Yeah. So I had to have a plan. Every 7 years, do something, add more, expand, be creative. I was a justice of peace in 1987. Performing weddings on my property.
I mean, the profit margin, everybody thinks, oh, look at all these trees. Look at the prices we have to pay when it's time that Christmas rolls around. When it really comes down to it.
Yeah. What about the time value of money? The effort, the investment, the land maintenance.
You have to trim those trees.
And after 8 years, finally it's worth something. Mm-hmm. And you think, yeah, it just popped out of the ground. Why are you charging me so much for it?
Yeah.
8 years' work.
But I bet you your profit margin is about 1%, if that.
It's with the taxes of what's going on right now. My profit margin is basically doesn't exist after I pay everything off.
Yeah. I'm quite sure.
It used to be years ago that I could take some cash out of it, and at least go for 2 weeks somewhere in my camper. But I can't even afford to do that with what this farm makes. And now, loss of 4 years of revenue on my farm has really put me behind the 8 ball now.
Oh, I'm quite sure. And here it is. This is called rent seeking. This is when people who don't like what's going on use the force of government to achieve their own aims. Public unions are infamous for that. But we see this crony capitalism more here in Concord and down in D.C. of people looking for a favored status to be able to do what they want, basically at the expense of others. And that's exactly what has happened to you with this farm, with the development going on, people doing things, building roads or driveways or what have you, without getting the necessary permits. If I remember right, didn't somebody put a road on your property?
Well, the developers there, they developed all around me. And the prime property we're concerned with is, I think it's 16 lots, but there's 12 lots there that are 150 feet wide, 10 acres deep. They're bowling alley lots. They're almost zero lot line lots. I never opposed them putting that in because they were following the law. I didn't like it in theory,
right,
but in principle, I could not say anything about it. I don't want it, but you're following the law. You can do it. But what they wanted to do was to move the road in front of my property to put in more lots and to get the driveway inside 200 feet from either side, for traffic, oncoming traffic. And that I opposed because they could not answer the question, who pays the taxes on that? Where does my road frontage? Do I own that property now? Who plows the road? What happens here? And nobody could answer that. So with that, there was, in one of the minutes, one of the developers said he would do anything he could to stop me from being in business.
Yeah.
Because if they get rid of you, then they can go ahead and develop the rest of it any way they want.
I made the choice years ago when this all started. It was either give up my farm or sell it to developers. And I decided to stay and fight this because this is so dear to my heart, what I've created here and what I believe in and what the property should be.
And let's just not forget that most of the planners are leftists. And by the way, they want a good, clean environment. They want green. Damn it, you grow green. You're a farmer of green. Trees, lots of trees. It's like they attack the paper companies who, frankly, are the reason why the northeast of this country, most of the north of this country, has been reforested since the 17th and 18th century when it was denuded by the early settlers who needed anything they could get their hands on to build or to heat.
Sure.
Well, also to build ships, which was really one of the prime movers for deforesting around here. But I digress.
Years ago...
This is what happens when you come into bloggers.
When you look around, even on my property, there are stone walls everywhere. With our stone walls, that was cleared land. Yep. That was agricultural property. That was farm land. In my town, what they did is they rezoned it and made me rural residential.
Oh.
Right? And so now that complicates it even more, even though that was a farm. Somebody grew something there. They either had sheep or cows grazing or something, and then because the farmers couldn't afford to be there anymore or went west to where the fertile soil is, everything just started growing up. And now people want to bring back these farms, and we have restrictions on them.
It's like that Constitution. It's old and, way back in that musty past. What good is it? Yada, yada, yada. I catch your point.
Yes, but agriculture is zoned in every area in Henniker. So I don't know about your town. I think it must be the same.
No, not well, mostly, but there are restrictions. The problem is there are a couple of neighbors that are complaining about the noise and the traffic, just like in your case. But they moved in and then discovered that, farms have smells. And they're actually trying to go further than just stopping the agritourism. There's still a couple of lawsuits that are in play. A lot of people are thinking that it won't go forward. I know someone on the select board that is very much against this going on by the person launching the lawsuits, and has basically said, you'll lose. But it comes down, now the libertarian side of Granite Rock comes out. If you buy a plot of land and you're using it for the purpose to which it was intended, you should be able to do that. It's your land. And the more that I do this political blogging, the more I tend to realize we're getting away from one of the things that was the main pillar of the United States at its founding, which was the right to private property, be it land, which was really the land back then, but it's also the case of what is it that you want to do with that land. When you look at it, if at the level of zoning with this kind of planning, a lot of people are losing the ability to control their property. Now, a lot of us think of it as, hey, this is just how we live, and they don't understand, as you pointed out, there were no zoning laws back in the day when you bought the land in Henniker. It never used to be that you can't do this, you can't do that. You know, in my town a few years ago, there was a lot of hue and cry in the historical district. I mean, you talk about a bunch of nattering nabobs of nothingness trying to decide you can't have that color on those wooden cedar shakes. It's not historical. Or you can't do this, you can't do that. It's like, yeah, when you buy in now, I understand that you could have a problem. But, you know, if the same family's been living in that place for generations, they ought to be standing up and saying, no, I don't agree to this. Mike.
Yeah, exactly. Correct me if I'm wrong, but historically, New Hampshire and maybe Maine have been basically no zoning law states, where most towns didn't really have zoning laws at all.
Well, again, it comes back to the whole idea starting from the 1940s is that we have to plan where we live.
Well, it's the master plans came.
Right.
And that was the start of everything. And I'm not saying, you know, most people, as far as I don't need a regulation to tell me what common sense, as far as safety issues or noise, or I'm trying to be a steward of the land. I don't want to jeopardize my property or losing my property because I did something that violated my standards. And I said this the other night at the select board, at the planning board meeting. My previous life was spent 37 years taking people around the world in a cylinder that carried 300 people.
Yeah.
I'm aware of the safety issues. My life revolved around safety 110%. So I'm not going to jeopardize and lose that mentality because somebody thinks that they know better than I do. I know what I need to do on my property.
And that's the problem that we're seeing today in this polarized country that we now live in, is that oftentimes we on the right, especially here at Granite Rock, we love to have the discussion. Frankly, if I lose in the arena of ideas, I deserve to lose if I cannot buttress my arguments. But as we're seeing, before you walked in, we were starting to go through what we call our WTF moments of the week. And what we're seeing right now out in California is exactly what we mean, where you see that the left, and there was, where was that article? In Vox. And it talks about smug liberalism. And I still need to get a post. I have a 5-month-old grandson that I am helping to raise. And my time to blog I can't do long stuff anymore.
Well, likewise, I tend to do quick hits very rarely because work tends to go on at all hours.
Yeah.
I don't even want to go into the whole details. But, so 5 o'clock comes by and my last meeting's gone. Well, can you help this new guy do a planned system migration? Sure. Okay. Then I'm getting pinged from one of the gals that's been with us a year or so. This customer's got some weird networking problems, and I'm not quite sure. So I'm helping the one guy on this keyboard and the gal on the other keyboard, and that's all over. And I say goodbye to my wife, who's going off to dialysis, and the phone rings, and it's one of our slightly more experienced guys who's been handed an outrageous project to do that should have been planned and sold as a project.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get everything right and dot the I's and cross the T's, and this keeps me going until 10 p.m.
Yeah. But to get back to Steve's problem, this idea of a smug liberalism where the left believes that it knows far better than those on the ground on the right. They look at us with disdain. They don't understand, as you said, you know what's to be right, but your words were, they think they know better than us, and they literally do.
And they're raising a generation that thinks that government knows better than them, which is why the problem's going to get worse and worse. You know, the modern kids are going to litter, pollute, and pervert until somebody else stops them. They won't stop themselves. And, you know, society is morphing into a place where the boundaries around us are external instead of internal. It's about character and responsibility, which, you know, as an airplane pilot, you
Mike,
have to have. Yeah.
Mike, do I have my email up on that? The technical problem here. Do I have my email up on this machine? If I do, can you shut it down, please?
Hang on. Avant, Robert Pondicio, that's not mail, is it?
No.
What
You're going to need that in a little bit.
Yeah, I know I am. I don't see something that says mail. What would it be called?
EM client.
Don't think I do. Hold
Okay.
on. Let me start Task Manager.
Well, tell you what. We need to take a break anyways. So, folks, we'll be right back. We're going to take a small technical break so I can get my email back on my machine instead of our live stream camera machine. And we are Grok Talk. We will return in just a moment.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Grok Talk.
And we are back. I'm still Skip Murphy, have been for quite some number of years. You are listening to Grok Talk, a production of GraniteGrok.com, New Hampshire's leading conservative libertarian blog site, and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers can be found at cnht.org. We are joined here in studio by Steve Forster from Henniker, tree farmer who has been embroiled in legalities for the last few years as a set of developers decided that they had exclusive right to how you would run your business, your tree farm, and in collusion with the fiat of the local cabal. I'll leave it at that. And frequent commenter at Granite Grok lives out that way as well, Kathleen LaBonte. And I want to thank you both for coming all the way in. We're trying to get Grokster Kimberly on the line with us. We should be able to do that. She's got a whole raft of things she wants to bring in. But let's finish this up. One of the things that I've always thought of is the whole idea of local control. And it's a very important issue here in the state of New Hampshire. But as you all know, towns and cities here in New Hampshire are nothing more than subdivisions of the state government. And in a lot of cases, it's a lot of groaning. When you look at the educational stuff that's going on right now, this is not a good thing. It takes control away from the local folks who generally know better how their schools should be run. But I also look at this situation where if you get that entrenched set of people that decide that a town is theirs to run, and I went up against that in my town when I was on the budget committee, fighting the good old boys and the quality of life people and the big spenders, and how dare you question our numbers and why we're using them. There is a sense of, yes, there should be some state control. And you found out the hard way when you get a small entrenched set of folks who've decided that they own the town for whatever reason, how hard they can make life for you. I'm going to turn this over to Kathleen. You've been a frequent commenter on this. What do you think?
Well, I think to your audience, one thing that I really would like to project out there is that the planning consultants, the regional planners, or any full-time planners that you have, they have, and the Municipality Association, honestly, Cordell Johnston lives up in Henniker, and they have gotten between you and your elected officials. And so your voice has absolutely been erased. I think you said something about, the disdain they have for the public, and it's true. We walk in our meetings, and they have absolute disdain for us. And in fact, one of the board members of the planning board said, I was out in the hallway signing in, and he said, if they say something that we don't like, we're just going to shut this meeting down. We're going to stand up and we're going to walk out. And I heard that, and I went into the room. I was the first one there, and I said, are you talking about me? Are you talking about the citizen in Henniker that pays taxes in here and came here to talk to you about these ordinances and agriculture and agritourism? And so it was a really horrible moment. So what I wanted to say about planning boards and consultants and all that, when we tried to write our ordinances, when we tried to write this ordinance, they would not let us participate and do one together. The planning board kept us at bay at every meeting. They would tell us to come to this meeting or come to that meeting, and we would come, and they go, oh, sorry, you can't talk. And I found in the file that Cordell Johnston, who was the lobbyist for the Municipality Association, had written emails to our planning consultant, and they were crafting this ordinance that they have now embedded. And ours is embedded. So we've got two contrasting ordinances now.
Yes, and they were both passed by at the town meeting.
And they were both passed. Ours with 4 votes more.
Okay.
Ours had 4 votes more. But when they told me at one of the meetings he was just submitting stuff as a citizen, I have here.
Please.
I have here that he was the chair of the planning board, and he was the one who was instrumental in 1998 and 1999 of putting in the site plan review regulations. He put those in, and it was such an intense thing that went on there, and they were so aggressive that they actually lost a lot of their board members the next year, and they had to find a lot of alternates to come in so that they could hold a meeting.
Wonderful.
And so it belies, when they look right at me, I don't know what they think, but when they look at me and they tell me something, I'm going to do some digging, and I'm going to find the answers, and I'm not going to let them get away with that. But I would like to say to your audience, we have to start removing these consultants and these municipality association lobbyists and attorneys and all of that, and really get them out of our way so that we can work directly with our boards and help craft our own ordinances, our own. This would not have gone through if we were not aggressive ourselves.
Okay, Kimberly, are you there?
I'm here. Hi, guys.
Hi there.
Hi, Kimberly.
Yeah, we have.
How are you?
I'm great.
We have Kathleen, LaBonte, and Steve Forster here. I had put up the post saying, well, we may have a couple of surprises. And, well, Mike and I started the show, and, yes, we got surprised.
I've been watching online.
Oh, good.
The first surprise was we actually got the show going.
Yes. My laptop decided that it wasn't going to work, and I've got all kinds of problems. So, anyways, what do you think of the discussion? If you've been watching online, what are your thoughts, Kimberly?
Well, first of all, you should be able to do what you want with your own property. That's number one. But these guys shouldn't have had to fight that hard to do what Steven's been already doing.
That's right.
And they were well, it's Henniker, so Henniker has a reputation. But these guys fought hard, and they did great. And they've even been pushed back on by, like Kathleen was saying, oh, you can't do that. You can't speak. Wasn't Booten one of them?
Oh,
my buddy
sure.
Booten, my drunk buddy Booten.
I think we've both gotten phone calls from Booten that we probably shouldn't discuss here on this show.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
If
we don't want to get them in trouble.
On the other hand, if Booten's been bullying, we want to make sure we expose him, because this guy needs to be hounded out of office. And Jane came kind of close last time. We can always hope that That'll happen
Is
again.
anyone running against him in the primary, do you know?
Unsure just yet.
How does he call in?
Oh.
Because he needs to be, Booten needs to be booted. I mean, he needed to be booted a long time ago.
What's
but
line 2?
Dirtbag extraordinaire.
9690. 603
You're absolutely right.
9690.
We got a couple things going on here.
I'm going to watch.
We've got a few minutes left in this segment, and then I want to get to you, Kimberly, because you had a couple.
To go on.
Oh yes, I want to, Steve. I want to make sure at this point, going forward, you are able to do what you started off 4 years ago to do. Is that correct?
Let's clear this all up by I am practicing agritourism, which includes weddings, functions, and anything to do with drawing people to a farm. And everybody focuses on weddings, and weddings are a bad thing. I practice agritourism. I want to introduce multiple streams of income to my farm to sustain myself. And getting back to the politics of this whole thing, one of my big things that sticks in my side is that when I started all this, I defended a state RSA, and not one politician stepped up to the plate and helped me defend it. The state should have been behind me 100%. The writers and the people that created this should have been behind me 100%. The response I got from Booten about that was that, well, he wasn't there at the time, so it doesn't include him.
Of course,
of course. But getting back to Booten, he came to my farm. The moment I met him, I never got the warm, fuzzy feeling about this man. Never.
No, we haven't either.
Never. Never. So that's what I will say about him. Him and I had a conversation, and I confronted him on it, and I will leave it at that, with that, and end that conversation with that note.
Okay. Bruce, are you there?
I'm here.
Well, thanks for calling in to Grok Talk and joining the conversation. We've got about 3 minutes left in this segment, which is way out of control anyways, time-wise. And I know we've got Kimberly to talk about. And, Steve, I want to ask both you and Kathleen to come back in. And you're welcome to stay. If you came all the way from Henniker, feel free to stay as our guest host through the rest of the show. But we'll bring you back again to talk about this because I know there's a ton of stuff we haven't gone through at this point. But, Bruce, go ahead and let's hear what you have to say.
Well, thanks. Good morning to everybody. And I just turned on and just got onto my computer. So I don't know what's already been said. But a couple of things that's really interesting, Skip, is that and we've said this in front of the planning board recently, and I was on the zoning board when Steve came for us, but the actions of the town of Henniker were so egregious that the town of people actually took it into their own hands and rewrote their own ordinance. And Steve's Supreme Court case, the majority was so egregious, and Justice Hicks's dissent was so right on, that it moved the state legislature to actually change the statute. Now, that happens very rarely, but when it does, you have to understand, and I would hope all of the land use boards around the state understand that this is really a grassroots effort, and it is defining grassroots effort. And the two people who are in front of you, they should be proud of all the work that they did.
And I think that's a very good thing to say because it's gone, the media has been sort of wishy-washy. I know that we haven't done everything that we could have, and we should have done more, and our apologies there. We tried to carry it when we could.
You did good. You did a lot for us.
But, it shows once again, and Bruce, I think that you can agree to this, and Kimberly, I'm going to ask you the same question, is here in this state, one or two determined people can make a difference. Bruce?
Absolutely. No question. And one or two people can actually articulate what the future of our state should look like and really shine that really spotlight on how we're not protecting our future.
Correct. And Bruce, I'm going to let you go because we're just about out of time here, but thanks for calling in. Hopefully you'll do that again in some other shows. Kimberly?
We'll do so. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Kimberly?
Yes.
The idea that one or two determined people can make a big difference here in the state of New Hampshire still.
I I absolutely agree with that. I gave a presentation about local politics last year at PorkFest, and that was one of my things that I said. You can be one person, you may be one voice, but you can make things happen.
Indeed. All right, folks, I want to say thanks to Steve and Kathleen for coming in. They're going to stick around at their decision to be guest hosts at this. We're going to take about a 2-minute break, and then Kimberly, we're going to I'm just going to turn everybody else off and turn your microphone up nice and high, and you can go for it, because I saw that you put up something about Casa, and I think that's something that we can all enjoy. Folks, I'm Skip Murphy. This is Grok Talk, a production of GraniteGrok.com and CNHT.org. We will be right back.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Need more Grok Talk? Well, you can catch new shows Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Miss a show? Not a problem. Past shows are rebroadcast here daily from 9 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. Join us for 2 hours of unapologetic conservatism. And we're not just armed with opinions.
Grok Talk.
And we are back. I'm Skip. He's Mike. We still have Steve and Kathleen here in the studio.
And we have Kimberly, who's armed with more than just opinions.
Oh, gosh, she is. All right. Now, you put up something. I know that in the emails we had last night, you had a couple of things that you wanted to bring up, but I saw you quickly put up, Ayotte supports CASA Act that could destroy your sons in college. And I could tell from your emails that, man, somebody's going to be really upset that she ever participated in this. Go, Kimberly.
This CASA Act is called the Campus Accountability and Safety Act. It was legislation that was brought forth by extreme left-wing nutjob Claire McCaskill of Missouri. And the whole legislation is based on a bogus claim that there's a rape culture, quote-unquote, on college campuses. That study has been debunked over and over and over again. Even the Department of Justice debunked that story. So there is no rape culture. It's a bogus claim made up by left-wing lunatics of course, because they hate men, especially, left-wing feminists. But so now they're using that bogus rape culture claim to push the Campus Accountability and Safety Act. And what this does is it puts any kind of sexual assault accusation in the hands of the college and university. And the kids that are accused, which is, of course, probably mostly boys, they don't have their right to due process. They can't have testimony. They can't cross-examine the supposed victim. It completely takes their rights away. They can't even, if it's a false accusation, they can't even, bring that up. They can't bring up any evidence that they might have that is bogus. It completely destroys your sons on a college campus, especially if it's a false accusation. Why anyone would be for this, especially someone who was an attorney general, is beyond pale. This bill is egregious, and it violates our human rights in this country, because if you're accused of a crime, you have the right to a trial. You are innocent until proven guilty, but with the CASA Act, you're guilty, guilty, guilty. It doesn't matter if the claim is bogus or not. And Kelly Ayotte is supporting this. I don't know what the hell she is thinking. Maybe she thinks she's pandering to women, but it's disgusting. And anyone who is a mother who's going to have a child ever in college, or who has ever had a son in college, needs to get on the phone and call her out for this, because it's ridiculous.
Absolutely, Kimberly. So, what I'd like to see, if these laws... Hang on, you just muted me, I think.
No, you're good.
Okay. If these laws are in effect, what I'd like to see is the first rape claim against an MX who ends up in the ladies' bathroom and molests a girl. Will he, she, it be subject to due process or not? That's the question.
Well, this could affect girls too, because if a girl claims another girl sexually assaulted her, this could affect women too. So it's not just sons; it's just that boys happen to be more of the ones who are accused. Look, I wrote a story last year for the Federalist Papers about a boy at Amherst College who was accused by this girl 2 years after she claimed a sexual assault occurred. And they railroaded him. They wouldn't let him show evidence that it wasn't true. They wouldn't let him show anything. And it turned out that she performed an act on him. It's a family show.
Thank you.
When he was when he was blacked out drunk. And part of the college's rules are if someone's drunk and they can't consent, that's considered assault. You can't expect them to know what they're doing. And he went through all of this. He was expelled from school. And Amherst College is supposed to be one of the elite schools, right? He went through hell because they wouldn't let him have due process. And that's the same kind of thing that's going on with this CASA Act. And it's all coming down from the Obama administration. They've been pushing, and they'll take federal funds away from colleges who don't do their performance, don't do their edicts. So
I'd like to take federal funds away from all colleges all the time, period, and let them beg from their states or from their alumni.
Yeah. Kimberly, this really all stems from a Dear Colleague letter. This is akin to the Never Let a Crisis Go to Waste. They saw an opportunity, and they've taken advantage of it. And just like the EPA is redoing, authorizing legislation to its own liking in ways that it was never intended to, so was this Dear Colleague from one of the offices within, and I can't remember what it is, out of the Federal Department of Education that basically told colleges, you will do things this way, or like you said, that we will withhold federal money. And now, finally, 5 years after this letter was pushed out, Congress is finally taking note and saying, you have no authority to do this. There's nothing in the legislation that says this. You're pushing it not even as a rule that has gone through the normal process. This was just a letter, and yet you're berating and getting ready to come down. I think Department of Justice now took that Dear Colleague and is going after University of Oklahoma and basically saying you will basically destroy the regular judicial process here in the United States and making colleges judge, jury, and executioner all within their own community, and they're not set up for this. They don't know how to do investigations. They're not giving the right to see the accused, habeas corpus. They're not giving the accused the right to counsel or anything else like that. These are generally held in star chamber type environments in front of student government who are basically, extremely liberal anyways, and then the feminist centers on campuses are basically coming in with nails stuck through their clubs and beating these poor guys in. And now, and comment on this, Kimberly, some of these guys who have been so duly destroyed have hired lawyers outside of the college communities and are now starting to win really big sums of money from these colleges. So now the colleges are stuck in the middle between either the folks that they throw out or the Department of Justice and the Department of Ed who are going to come after them that way. I think this is really just desserts. You?
Well, absolutely, because these people are just doing it saying, yes, no problem, we'll do it. We'll do whatever you say, because this is how Obama has been pushing his agenda for the past 8 years, by rulemaking, not legislation, rulemaking, back end around Congress, who doesn't touch any of these and doesn't make any laws, but pushing this kind of stuff. I just wrote about this for the Heartland Institute, how they passed these rules that aren't really laws, but if you don't follow these rules, something is going to happen and you'll lose funding, or that application will get lost in the mail, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, colleges are reaping what they sow. Instead of getting all together and standing up and saying, hey, no, this is wrong. Not only is this study wrong, but we're going to stand up for our students and make sure they all have due process. We don't want anything bad to happen, but we're going to use the courts of law and the actual police to solve these cases and deal with these things the way they're supposed to be dealt with. No, instead, because most of them are left-wing lunatics, they just bend right over and say, screw the boys, who cares? Boys, especially white heterosexual males, are the last group in the United States that is just allowed to get the hell beat out of them, and no one cares. Well, I'm sorry. As a mother with a son, screw you.
Yeah, here's a comment from your post. If there were really a rape epidemic on college campuses, how could any parent in good conscience send their daughter to college? And this echoes what Glenn Reynolds has been saying on Instapun. He's been all over this for a couple of years now. It's like, if this really existed, why aren't our college campuses armed camps of police standing outside every other room?
Because it's not true. It's absolutely not true. And as usual, Democrats and the left always use bogus studies because they hate facts. It doesn't fit their narrative, so they have to make it. They do this with everything. They do it with health care. They do it with gun control. They use bogus things or emotional reasoning to pass laws like this that only end up hurting the very people they're supposed to be claiming to help. And that's why I don't understand why even one supposed quote-unquote Republican got on board with this, because Rubio was on board with this too.
Yeah.
That's when I first found this. I found this several months ago.
Okay, we've got Kathleen LaBonte here, one of our favorite commenters. What do you think of our junior senator piling in and supporting this kind of process?
Oh, gosh. Kimberly says it very well for me. Whatever she's saying, I am totally in agreement with. So I can't even comment past her. It's outrageous. It's outrageous.
Steve?
Well, we got to go back to where you're innocent till proven guilty, and that's where it should stay. And what came to my mind right now is we have a patriot sitting in a jail out west.
Jerry DeLemus.
Yes, Jerry DeLemus. Yep.
Where's due process? Innocent. He's innocent first. Let's prove him guilty. So,
yeah, they made outrageous claims. They said he was a dangerous guy. They haven't even got, I think, reasonable cause, or probable cause rather, that he actually did anything illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Kimberly, what do you think we should be doing vis-a-vis Casa and our junior senator?
Bye.
You can't get any pithier than that. No, seriously, what is it that our listeners and we here at Granite Rock should be doing? It's not like I'm not beating the heck out of her already.
I shall look forward to imitating James Taranto of the Wall Street Journal, who normally does this for presidential candidates. If we succeed in derailing Kelly's re-election, whether or not Maggie Hassan gets the seat, although I'd prefer it was a Republican or Libertarian, I shall write a baiku for her.
What everybody in New Hampshire needs to do, I don't care if you're left, right, middle, I don't care what you are, you need to call her office and you need to demand that she stop supporting this ridiculous bill. She was interviewed by WMUR recently, and as much as I love John DeSazzo, he doesn't ask, no mainstream press ever asks the questions about these bills. They don't seem to do the research, or they just don't care. So they just take whatever spew comes out of these politicians' mouths as if it's fact. Mm-hmm. And this is what has got me so angry is people are reading this, oh, yeah, it's to help our daughters because, oh, my God, the rape culture that's happening on college campuses. No, it's not. None of it is true, and this is going to hurt your sons and your daughters. And people need to be furious about this bill. I don't even have a kid in college or going to be going to one. I am furious about this. I am worried and concerned for other kids, other people's kids that are going to have to deal with this. And Ayotte should be ashamed of herself for supporting this and pushing this because it's crap.
Yeah, I'm looking at this now from the lens of the presidential election and what it's doing to the Republican Party because we've seen the split between the GOP establishment and what we call the Liberty and Freedom wing of the Republican Party here in New Hampshire, where the two basically really disdain each other, and I think the establishment really hates what used to be called the Tea Party. for those who don't quite get the liberty and freedom moniker. But I'm looking at it from what's going on within the GOP and this presidential race. I look at what Kelly Ayotte has been doing, being very un-Republican. When you compare it against the standard of quality, again, I come from a manufacturing background now, I measure Republicans by their platform. And where does this even fit? I mean, this is basically, as you said, the left pushes this kind of thing. Well, if she's thrown her name against this, Kimberly, what do you think? Is she just a... Oh, I'm going to give you such a large opening. Right. Is she just an R in name only?
She's not even an R in name only. She is a Democrat who has decided to put an R next to her name, and that's not even Republican in name only. She is a Democrat. She is a leftist. She has gone more and more to the left over the past several months because it's an election coming up. And this tells me a couple of things. Either she's doing internals and she thinks that this is what people really want in New Hampshire, which tell me New Hampshire is going to hell in a handbasket, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Or she really thinks that this pandering type of legislation is a good thing because that's what Hassan does. She's insane, okay? She's got an I next to her name for insane because these kind of things hurt her very own constituents, and they could hurt her own children.
Mm-hmm. Well, is she going to be the next person that in the line of Walt Havenstein and Scott Brown, who pandered to the left, and then look what happened?
I think so. I mean, this began in my experience in New Hampshire. I know it goes back a long way, a long and dishonorable line, all the way to back to the scam man's speakership. My first experience of this was Charlie the Rhino. Who emulated the Democrats until he was defeated by a real one. Because given a choice between a fake Democrat and a real one, people will choose the real thing. Lo and behold, Chis Sununu, a very nice guy, by the way, failed to defend himself against the Democrats. Maybe tried to outdo them on a couple of things. Was replaced by Jeanne Shaheen. Along comes Scott Brown, who tries to out-abortion Jeanne Shaheen and doesn't beat her. Quelle surprise. And now Kelly Ayotte appears to be outdoing the left on women's issues in order to deflect the possible ascendancy of the corrupt and complicit Hassan. And this is the way to lose, not the way to win.
Well, and here's the thing. I gave a speech recently at a Republican committee, and one of the things I said was, now I can't even remember. You made me lose my train of thought. Oh,
sorry.
We were quiet.
Good rant.
That very rarely happens.
Oh, I remember you emailing us about it. Is that the biggest problem is that Republicans aren't acting like Republicans.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Thank you, Skip. Thank you. You totally made me regain my train.
Choo-choo. Just don't tell the Nashua folks about choo-choos, please.
One of the things that I said at this meeting was, look, I'm an independent. I look at both parties, and I don't see a difference between Democrats and Republicans. What am I going to do? Who am I voting for? None of the above. And this is why we end up getting more Democrats or we get left-wing Republicans. Because you know what? A lot of people don't know what's going on, but those of us who do are not going to waste our vote, and we're not going to reward these people by re-electing them. And this is huge. This is a huge point. Do not re-elect someone who has spent however many years screwing you over and doing something that is against what they should be doing and against your best interest as a granite stater. I don't care if you're your local state rep, your senator, your U.S. senator, your U.S. rep. What is wrong with people that they keep voting for these people because they have a D or an R next to their name?
Well, the Democrats are rarely disappointed with what they get. It's the Republicans that seem to want to be auxiliary Democrats. Skip, sorry.
Yeah, I think you're right, Kimberly, and I think we're getting to the point within the Republican Party that a lot of the conservative base is finally been figuring out what I've been saying for years. Winning is only a precursor. It's what you do afterwards that really is important. And we saw what she said during her campaign. I have it on video, and I'm going to start popping those videos up all the time.
Preferably next to little pieces about what she actually did.
Yeah, that's correct. Like illegal immigration. She was all against amnesty, and then she fell in with Gramnesty and McCain, and she turned tail on that. And
from the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Rock Talk.
From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Rock Talk.
This week, I was out of the studio. I had to go pick up a new puppy. But Skip and Mike had things well in hand with surprise guests Kathleen LaBonte and Steve Forster from Henniker. We also had Executive Council member and candidate for governor Chis Sununu on the show. Skip didn't have my laptop, so all the music and promos have been added post-production. Thankfully, he took some breaks. Not always the same breaks we usually take, so there was some creative editing, but all the content is there for you to enjoy. Stay tuned, Grok Talk starts in just a few minutes.
Rock Talk.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Steve McDonald here. You ever notice how Democrats like to create problems so they can then claim to solve them? Take Medicaid expansion, for example. Even if the federal government keeps its promise to New Hampshire to pay for most of it, it'll still cost New Hampshire taxpayers tens of millions of dollars more to provide inferior care and coverage to people who, for the most part, would never have needed it if Democrats hadn't reformed health care in the first place. That's right, that real expensive reform that doesn't care if it's only affordable if you act like you don't need insurance. Well, its number one claim to fame at this point is how many more people it forced onto Medicaid. And that's only because Obamacare kicks tens of millions of people off the plan they liked and were told they could keep but couldn't. So Medicaid expansion was always part of Obamacare for a reason. Democrats knew all along that the Affordable Care Act was unaffordable and they'd need to make Medicaid bigger and more expensive. So when people got their plan kicked to the health care curb, they could still sign up for something, even if it was something as crappy as Medicaid. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Steve McDonald here. You want proof that Democrats are evil? Well, just look at the Democrats' Obamacare contraceptive mandate. Federal government trying to force religious organizations like Little Sisters of the Poor and Priests for Life to make chemical abortions administratively available to any woman who works for them, even though it violates their religious conscience and they consider it to be murder. At the same time, the Obama administration has provided, without much if any fight, the very same exemptions these religious groups want to organizations like Visa, Pepsi, and even Exxon. Religious groups have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to take their case to the Supreme Court, and Exxon gets a pass. That's right, a big evil oil company gets an exemption, and Democrats don't even like them. Like I said, Democrats are evil. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Now, it is true that there are a bunch of lobbyists and a bunch of Democrats in this state spending millions of dollars trying to convince the people of Iowa that I somehow oppose ethanol. It's not true. I have introduced legislation that would phase out the ethanol mandate over 5 years, but that is in the context of having no mandates whatsoever for anyone. And I would note there's a much more important government regulation to ethanol, and that's the EPA's blend wall that makes it illegal to sell mid-level blends of ethanol and gasoline. I will tear down the EPA's blend wall, which will enable ethanol to expand its market share by up to 60%, all without mandates, all without any government mandates whatsoever through the marketplace. And I'll note finally, Chris, there is a reason that Iowa's Congressman Steve King, perhaps the fiercest defender of farmers in this state, is chairing my campaign, because he understands that I'm committed to a fair and level playing field for every energy source without lobbyists and without Washington picking winners and losers.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteGrock.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrock.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrock.com.
Grok Talk.
I think you're right, Kimberly, and I think we're getting to the point within the Republican Party that a lot of the conservative base is finally been figuring out what I've been saying for years. Winning is only a precursor. It's what you do afterwards that really is important. And we saw what she said during her campaign. I have it on video, and I'm going to start popping those videos up all the time.
Preferably next to little pieces about what she actually did.
Yeah, that's correct. Like illegal immigration. She was all against amnesty, and then she fell in with Gramnesty and McCain, and she turned tail on that. And she was all about that until all of a sudden she saw how the politics winds flipped right around when Trump got in and got overwhelming accolades from the ordinary folks out in the street. And she's been very quiet on that ever since. But you're right. Why should I vote? I've said before, I'm viewing my vote like I would spending my dollar in the marketplace. And this drives a lot of establishment Republicans crazy. I don't spend my money willingly on inferior products or services. Why should I spend my vote? One of the very few things I have as a citizen, because the left and some Republicans are giving everything else that should be a citizen's right and privileges away to everybody else. Why should I spend it on somebody that hasn't earned it? I'm no longer a Republican. I unenrolled because of this. So now if you want my vote, you best earn it, or I'm not going to give it to you. The Republican Party has gotten as entitled as the Democrats, thinking the Democrats think that the blacks and all of the minorities should be voting for them because they're minorities. Republicans expect that if you're a Republican, we demand your vote. I'm not doing that anymore.
No, they haven't earned it. You know, I want to see the party actually stand for its platform. It has one.
It's a good one.
You know, you want to talk about what it is that Ted Cruz embodies. It's not that he's Lucifer in the flesh. He's the damn party platform in the flesh, and these people are so afraid that he will actually stand up for it. And what I want to see is real leadership actually get in charge of the parties. You know, we have to take over the precincts. Richard Vigory's book, Takeover. You got to start at the bottom and get control, grab the bull by the whatever, and get charge of the party, because we need to put somebody in the chair that actually respects the party platform, and will have strong words, not wishy-washy ones, with elected officials who don't toe the party line and say, we're going to eject you, or at least make it clear publicly that you don't represent us if you don't do what the platform says 90% of the time, or even 80% of the time.
Okay, Kimberly, I know that we're about 9 minutes out, and then we're going to be switching gears with our next guest. But I know that you had more to rant about, like Representative Welch and SB 116 and 582 and 336.
Yeah. Representative Welch voted for Senate Bill 116 and House Bill 582, which are both also known as constitutional carry, which also changed the discriminatory suitability rule to be, anyone who can legally purchase and possess a firearm according to state and federal law. But Welch decided he wasn't going to vote for Senate Bill 336, which does the same thing, only it's just a test from the pistol licensing law. So it just makes it so there's no more discrimination, and chiefs of police and pistol revolver license issuers can't discriminate. For some reason, he won't vote for that one. Now, this guy is a jackass anyway, because I've dealt with him. But how can you vote for these constitutional carry bills that actually remove the pistol license as an option, but not vote for this bill that just all it does is get rid of the discrimination, the state-sanctioned discrimination, which the New Hampshire Department of Safety just admitted, yeah, it happens. After over a year of us saying it does, they admitted it. So it blows my mind how idiotic these people are. Basically, what he's saying by doing this is, I only voted for that other stuff because I knew it would give me some 2A cred for an election year, and I knew Hassan would veto it. I don't really care about stopping discrimination. I don't really care about the Second Amendment. And I totally believe that all of the Senate Republicans did the same thing. And granted, some Republicans, there's good ones in there, far and few between, but there are some good ones who actually are Second Amendment supporters, like Ed Kamal, John Burt, who are on the Judicial Committee.
You're right, and I just look at this, and it's just another case of you've got a Republican who really doesn't care about Republicanism, unless you're a Republican for the sake of the Republican Party.
They have a freaking oath of office that they take to uphold the New Hampshire Constitution. They aren't doing it. Most of them aren't doing it. I am so aggravated with New Hampshire politics. I'm on the verge of just giving up on this state. Look, there's another bill, since we were talking about I might as well talk about Hassan, because we just are screwed when it comes to the U.S. Senate seat. Hassan and some Republicans, including Bradley, pushed a bill that's going to let the Board of Medicine make rules about pain medication prescriptions, and they are getting in between you and your doctor, and they're telling your doctor what they should be doing and how they should be prescribing medication for you. And if they don't do it, they could be get a doctor who doesn't follow the rules, could get unprofessional conduct under the Board's Practice Act. Hassan signed this into law. This is a woman who said, you shouldn't let bureaucrats or government get in the way of women's health care. Really? What do you call this, you witch? This is exactly what she's doing. And some Republicans supported this as well. Of course, there's no roll call. So they're going to this is exactly what the Obama administration has been doing. Instead of making laws, because they don't have the balls to make these laws, they are going an end round. So they make this law that lets the Board of Medicine have to make all the rules. And we have to suffer the consequences, all because a minority percentage of people in New Hampshire are freaking drug addicts. It is every one of us will suffer under these rules. Every single one of us. Of course, the druggies will still be getting their drugs and still be doing illegal drugs. But the rest of us who actually might have pain, or, your mother who might have to go to the hospital and she's suffering, they're going to tell her she's really not in that much pain.
Yeah, actually, sorry, go ahead. So somebody else had a...
Didn't Plymouth isn't a
marijuana dispensary?
Wasn't that in the paper today?
Yeah, opened up this morning.
Plymouth?
Steve, you had something?
I lost my train of thought because she was talking so much, and I forgot where I was going to say.
Well, let me.
Well, we did say it would be a good long rant. Well done, Kimberly.
What else is new? I mean, he has these executive actions, and he negates Congress, and we let him. What else do we expect? We're getting what we deserve because nobody's standing up to him. And
this is Hassan, Steve. This is our own friggin' state, and Republicans are complicit. This bill wouldn't have passed if it wasn't for some Republicans in the Senate and the House. We have a majority of Republicans in the Senate and the House. You wouldn't know it because more Democrat rule laws and legislation have been passed than when Democrats controlled the House.
I agree wholeheartedly with you. When I came here, I left New Jersey.
Oh.
And I'm going to make a statement that maybe it'll be offensive to somebody, but I left New
go
Jersey
for it.
because of the rat race down there. And now the rats are following me up here. This was a very, very conservative state when I first came here. And when you went to a town meeting where a town meeting meant something, it was all unbelievably conservative on spending on all issues. Now, I just see, I came here from New Jersey because I didn't want to go to Vermont. Most New Yorkers and New Jersey people go to Vermont. Because of their politics, I stayed away from that. I came to this conservative state. This doesn't exist anymore here.
Nope.
And you're exactly right, Kimberly. These are not Republicans. None of them are Republicans. And I just look south, you know, at the state down south there, and I see this influx is slowly coming up here. The creep is coming up here. And for me, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know where to go. You know, I just want to be left alone on my farm and produce an income.
Yeah.
And
we
survive.
need an island.
Guys.
We need an island.
Yeah, guys, I have to bring this to a close because we're ready to go to our next guest, Robert Pondicio of the Fordham Institute. Folks, you're welcome to stay if you want. Kimberly, are you going to stay on the line with us?
I am probably going to listen online.
Okay. Well, very good. I want to thank Kathleen LaBonte, Steve Forster, and our very own Kimberly Morin for coming on the show today. Was unplanned, but this has turned out well. Folks, we're going to take a couple minutes break, and we're going to be talking with Robert Pondicio, who is the Vice President of External Affairs for the Fordham Institute. He had a nice op-ed in the Union Leader. We're going to talk about that and more. I'm Skip. He's Mike. We'll talk to you in a little bit.
They were...
From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Rock Talk.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Steve McDonald here. You want proof that Democrats are evil? Well, just look at the Democrats' Obamacare contraceptive mandate. Federal government trying to force religious organizations like Little Sisters of the Poor and Priests for Life to make chemical abortions administratively available to any woman who works for them, even though it violates their religious conscience and they consider it to be murder. At the same time, the Obama administration has provided, without much if any fight, the very same exemptions these religious groups want to organizations like Visa, Pepsi, and even Exxon. Religious groups have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to take their case to the Supreme Court, and Exxon gets a pass. That's right, a big evil oil company gets an exemption, and Democrats don't even like them. Like I said, Democrats are evil. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you. Need more Grok Talk? Well, you can catch new shows Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Miss a show? Not a problem. Past shows are rebroadcast here daily from 9 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. Join us for 2 hours of unapologetic conservatism. And we're not just armed with opinions.
Rock Talk.
And we are back. We are still trying to get a hold of our next guest. That would be Robert Pondicio of the Fordham Institute. Mike is working hard to try to get that. In the meantime, there's always plenty to talk about because there's always plenty of stuff going on. And one of the WTFs that I didn't get to in the first segment, I think this headline in the Washington Times says it all. White House compares anti-Trump rioters to Tea Party protesters. Man, what a sordid mess that is. If you haven't been following the news, the left has already decided that, just like we're seeing college campuses, just like we've been talking about with Kimberly, we see a really bad movement starting to come up. There's no longer the idea of discussions, right versus left, and to hash it out in the arena of ideas and see which argument could be best supported by the evidence and sometimes by philosophy. You know, the left is all about collectivism. We are all about individual rights. But as you have been watching the news and reading GraniteGrock.com, you know that we've been talking about a lot of the polarization that's been going on in the country and in the political sphere. Andrew Breitbart once said that culture is downstream from, politics is downstream from culture. And we see that, are we on?
No, he's not. He's going to call us, I hope.
Okay.
Okay.
So we see that polarization, but we're also seeing something latent that's been within the left for years, and it's now breaking out in full force, especially on college campuses. For the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen conservatives going to college campuses, and the left has said that's hate speech. You cannot talk here because it's hate speech, and they will do everything that they can to shut down the speakers because they've decided that they are such a monoculture that they have the right to basically do anything that they want. They give lip service to free speech, but as there's a story in The Onion, well, we have full freedom to talk about a given subject from a given single viewpoint, and you're welcome to say anything as long as it's aligned with us, is basically a good summary of this story here. And now we're seeing it in the presidential elections. Now out in California, where that primary is coming up on the Republican side, we're seeing large groups, large gangs, as they were, rather well organized.
Leftist rabble,
professional protesters from the left, starting to stop, or trying very hard to stop Donald Trump from speaking because they don't like his views. Now, instead of holding their own press conferences or holding their own rallies and talking about it, they're coming to Donald Trump's rallies and trying to shut it down. This is bad news. This used to be what we'd see over in Europe or maybe over in Asia. But here in the U.S., at least in the modern age, I know it was different way back when, we at least had some idea of civility. Free speech is free speech. We're losing that now.
Yeah, well, we had some measure of free speech, if at least it was a bit rowdy, at the political conventions and political meetings. You had hecklers and stuff. We always had hecklers in the UK. The problem here is that the leftist protesters, the nasty mobs that tried to shut down Wall Street and leave excrement everywhere, that would always go and throw rocks and burn things whenever there was a World Economic Forum or a G7 meeting or something like that. On U.S. soil, the leftist protesters would go and do as much damage as they could to somehow make their point. I never quite understood what their point was doing the damage. And now, as you say, they're showing up at rallies, especially showing up at Trump rallies, because just like the political class fears Cruz, the leftists fear Trump because, well, they call it hate speech, but in reality he's taking it to them on their terms, and they don't like it.
Yeah, there were also quite a few in watching the TV and watching what's online. Quite a few protesters, at least last night, where he basically had to go into the California GOP convention through a back door. But a lot of the protesters are waving Mexican flags. Now, I have an idea that in a lot of parts of the heartland, that if he were to gain the nomination, that kind of display is going to be remembered by a lot of the folks that are considered to be of no consequence in flyover country. I waving, hope. When I look at that and go, we've got Mexican citizens protesting Donald Trump just because he wants to defend our border, while he's not anti-immigration, he's anti-illegal immigration. If you're going to come here like you did, Mike, do it the right way through the legal channels and do it. But here are this mob, and there's really no better way to put it.
And nobody trained me as their replacement either.
Yes.
All of my mentors are still employed.
Yeah.
Some of them at the place I originally worked for.
But these people are demanding that we recognize them to be citizens. They want all the benefits and privileges of citizenship before they get it, even though they've broken the law. And I'm looking at this, and I will tell you something. I've been getting rather disgusted with what's been going on. Yes, I've endorsed Ted Cruz, but I'll tell you, I am willing to vote for Donald Trump just to put put a stick in these people's eyes, because, don't tell me what to do when you're not supposed to be able to vote. And to shut down the political process, well, screw you. Is a polite way of putting it. And I'm not going to put up with this, because I've had it with these people who decide that the thug political environment is the one that they want. Keep doing this, and you're going to get a rise out of a lot of people who have already voted for Trump because they're tired of the failed republicanism that we've seen and talked about with Kimberly and Kelly Ayotte. You're going to push them over the edge. At some point, you're going to see people on the right start pushing back, and it ain't going to be pretty.
Right, so let me just sort of throw in a couple of points here. First of all, these people are in public, unmasked, with flags, saying, basically, we're Mexicans, accept us, put up with it. Well, I hope somebody's filming that, because guess what? With facial recognition software these days, we can hunt the SOBs down and deport them, because they're not just unwelcome and illegal. They are militant, unwelcome, and illegal, and they need to be deported.
But they're not going to be deported, and that's part of the problem.
Not by these wusses.
Yeah, no, certainly not by the Obama administration, and not by the Bush administration before him, where they've taken a very lax view with the border. I mean, we're spending trillions on national security, and neither of these guys have basically said, I'm going to defend our southern border or even the northern border. And I look at this cognitive dissonance. It's like, if you're going to do security, you have to at least secure our borders first. If you want to come here, fine, do it the right way. But I'm looking at this, and this is not the first time, when we have illegals demanding citizenship. Now, consider that phrase again. Demanding citizenship.
Well, they're demanding the benefits of citizenship.
No, they're also saying, si se puede. Yes, we can. They want citizenship. They demand citizenship as if it is an entitlement that they are supposed to receive. I've got another story here where the ambassador from Mexico is trying to urge illegals and otherwise legal immigrants from his country to become citizens here in this country. Think about that, folks. Really think about that. Why would the Mexican government say, go become American citizens? We don't hear Obama saying, go become British citizens, go become Mexican citizens. And if you go to those countries, do you think you're going to be made a citizen just because you stand there with your arms akimbo and go, I should be a citizen? No, they're not.
They'll kick you out.
And they should.
And they'll put you in jail first. The Mexicans are very good at protecting their borders. They basically want to take over our policy in our country. The Mexicans in California, New Mexico, and the like are demanding that they get control of those territories, and they eventually want to make it part of Mexico again.
Yeah.
Well, if Jerry Brown succeeds in totally destroying California, we can lop the southern half of it off, and they can have their Venezuelan hellhole as an adjunct to Mexico.
Yeah.
But
it's heading that way.
But that's not the point. The point is, we shouldn't be rolling out a welcome mat saying, come and sign up for benefits. The only thing missing from the benefits package is the citizenship application at the back, frankly. We should be rolling out the spike strips like they used to stop cars on the highway and say, put your feet on those bastards. Sorry. But more than anything else, we should not roll out the welcome mat. There should be no benefits. Germany has reached such a bad state that legislation is being seriously proposed to deny benefits to new immigrants for 5 years. And I've always said, if you can come in and you can make your way, you can earn your living, and you can pay taxes. You pay taxes for 5 years, and you fall on temporary misfortune. Damn it, then temporary help is you're welcome to it.
No,
no,
and I'll tell you why.
Why?
Before we had this welfare state, when immigrants came in, I keep hearing from the left, we're a nation of immigrants. We're a nation of immigrants, as if we're supposed to be. What? We're forgetting that we're immigrants? Come on, look at my last name. I look at my parents' last names. we are all immigrants, but they were legal immigrants. And before Ted the Swimmer Kennedy decided to pass the latest version back in '86, or was it even '66? It used to be that if you were going to come to this country, you had to have a sponsor. That sponsor had to say, for X amount of time, I will be their support. If they ran into hard times, as you brought up, that sponsor was the person who was financially on the hook to do that. There was no wide welfare state for them to fall onto. And lots of immigrants made it. We used to have a civil society where, if you looked in the larger cities, where a lot of these people came from, Italy, Sweden, Ireland, Europe, they had the mutual aid societies that sprung up to help their former country citizens, to help them navigate, to learn English, get a foothold, get an apartment, get some food, get a job, get started, and then it was expected that they would return the favor to the next set of folks coming across. And you became an American.
And nobody's saying for a minute, certainly I'm not, that you should come and not become an American, which is what La Raza and these folks promoting the takeover of Azatlan.
Mecca and La Raza.
Yeah, are saying. What I'm saying is, okay, I like the idea of a sponsor, but a sponsor wasn't responsible for you in perpetuity, just for a good length of time, which is probably a period of a few years. If you have been successfully paying your way for a few years, I don't think it's unreasonable, and charity's better than the government, for sure. I don't think it's unreasonable to get you a little help to get to the next job, not for you to live it, to relax in a hammock somewhere.
But that's what our welfare system has become. F.A. Hayek said it right. No, not Hayek. Friedman. Milton Friedman said, okay, you cannot have open borders and a welfare state at the same time. And what we're seeing in Europe is exactly that. They've got a very extensive welfare system, far larger than ours, for their countries. And they had basically open borders, which is what we've seen over the last 2 years. And what's happening? Exactly what you said. They realized what Friedman said. We cannot have both. And all of the European countries are starting to put up the boards and say that, like that famous Mexican fighter said, no mas.
Right. And it's essentially, if you make the incentives great enough, it doesn't matter how high the wall. No matter how thick the walls of a bank, banks still get robbed. No matter how high the wall on the border, people will still come in if it is worth their while. If what they can get on welfare here is more than what they can earn working back home, they're going to come in. And so we have to stop that. The question is whether you make the denial of welfare permanent until they become an actual citizen by earning it, or for some defined period of time, but you don't get welfare the minute you walk in the door. That is an invitation. It is the welcome mat. I want to put some spikes on that welcome mat and say, you don't come in here unless you know what you're doing, you've got a job to come to, you've got either your return fare and or a sponsor, and you're going to work your way up.
Yeah, and essentially, though, what we're seeing is exactly the opposite, where if they're coming across the border, they're almost always assigned a social worker, and we're seeing them being deluged of, here, sign up for this, sign up for that, sign up for this, sign up for that, and we're seeing the exact opposite, and at some point it's going to backfire, because we saw the internal memo that came out that warned, I can't remember the department saying, be careful, get all of your immunizations set up if you're going to work with these people, because they are going to be bringing diseases into the country because they don't have the health system that we do. Protect yourselves as you work with these folks. And now we've seen what happened since then. We've seen diseases here in the U.S. that we have never seen before or haven't seen for a long time. Right. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut you off because we got to take a break and we have to get our next guest on the phone.
I'm just going to say that they used to check immigrants for diseases before they would let them in.
Correct.
And now they tell the people who are going to deal with the immigrants that they have to take the precautions. And what about, was it Lutheran Immigration Services, who supposedly are paid by the government to make people self-reliant? Self-reliant means getting them signed up for benefits.
Correct.
What a sham. Next segment.
With that, I'm Skip. He's Mike. We are Grok Talk, a production of GraniteGrok.com and CNHT.org. We'll be back in just a couple moments.
From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Rock Talk.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Need more Grok Talk? Well, you can catch new shows Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Miss a show? Not a problem. Past shows are rebroadcast here daily from 9 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. Join us for 2 hours of unapologetic conservatism. And we're not just armed with opinions.
Rock Talk.
And we are back. I'm Skip. He's Mike. We are Rock Talk. We're a little off schedule here a little bit. Steve's away, so we don't have the regular music in between, so we're just going to wing it, and Steve's going to be so mad at me for when he goes to chop this all up. We want to welcome Chis Sununu to the show. He is a New Hampshire executive councilor representing the Seacoast at this point. He is announced for the governorship race within the Republican Party. Chris, I want to say thanks for coming on the show. Uh-oh. Chris?
Isn't it one of the yellow ones?
Ah.
Hang on. He's got it mixed up. Chris, can you hear?
I can hear you. Oh.
That's
hey, guys.
it. Yeah, right, now let's find your fader. Keep talking, Chris, just for a second.
Yes, you bet.
Yeah, sorry about that, Chris. Steve normally runs the soundboard and has for years. He's away.
Guys, I'm number 7 of 8 kids. This is the story of my life. Every time I open my mouth growing up, no one paid attention. That's all right.
No. We want to pay attention. We appreciate what you did on the executive council. You, as always, will nitpick. But we just want to hear about what your plans are, how the campaign's going, and what your vision is for the gubernatorial slot. And I'm sure we'll have questions.
Sure. Well, look, I mean, the campaign is going great. I announced 6-7 months ago, back in September, and knowing that to run a good race in New Hampshire, you have to run a real grassroots campaign, and kind of the old-fashioned style of campaigning in New Hampshire. I really believe in it. You have to get out there. You have to see the people. You have to visit all 10 counties, travel the state, hear what people are saying, and making sure that your talking points and what you're trying to achieve is resonating with the people of New Hampshire. And so I spent my time doing that. It was, when you have the presidential campaigns going on at the same time, Senator Ayotte's race is quite intense. We knew we were going to have to work hard to pick our moments and kind of find the political oxygen when we could. Now, right now, obviously the national race is sorting itself out, and people are starting to pay a little more attention to what's going on in New Hampshire. If anything, I think people are appreciating the value of strong leadership that is needed in a state when you don't know what's going to happen on the national level. It's why the campaign is getting so much resonance and so much traction, and we're doing well. We feel great about it.
Super. Do you want to expand a little bit on the vision that you have? I mean, strong leadership is great. Some would argue with what kind of strong leadership, as we hear when we talk about, say, Hillary versus Donald versus Ted. What's your vision for the governor's job here, Chris?
Sure. Well, the thing that I see, I run Waterville Valley Resort up in North Country. I have about 700 employees up there. I'm an executive counselor. It's kind of how I tithe my time a little bit with public service on the executive council. And again, not to belay what the executive council does, but we really provide a lot of the oversight into the executive branch. The thing that I have seen in the past few years here, and what is really missing at the state level, both Republicans and Democrats alike, is we need leadership in the corner office that really understands how policy is impacting people's lives. And what I mean by that is, take any issue you want, Obamacare, minimum wage, health issues, the overregulation of the state. I am living and breathing those issues every day at Waterville Valley in my business with my employees, explaining to them how we're going to have trouble maybe investing in capital on a certain project, or how, to the dollar, certain policies and overregulation are burdening us. So when we talk about the stifling of the economic growth in New Hampshire, and we really are stifled, we're stagnant in this state in terms of economic growth, and we have been for quite some time. I'm living and breathing those issues every single day. And all the best legislation in Concord comes with unintended consequences. And unless you're on the front lines of these issues day in and day out, that's what we've been missing in the corner office. And more particularly with the Republican Party. You have good senators and really good House members out there working hard on key pieces of legislation only to get it vetoed time and time and time again. Well, this is the year we have a candidate that can win. The Democrats know it. On the national scale, they know it. The opportunity is there, and you can't govern if you don't win. So I've gotten in this race. I know I can win. There's a reason the Democrats hit me week after week after week, because they know that I'm the Republican that can win in November. And that's how we're going to start catalyzing in a lot of these issues that we talk about time and again. Right to work, constitutional carry, repealing Reggie. All these things can get done, but only if you have the corner office. So again, trying to bring that frontline experience with my business side of things. I mean, we can talk education. Education's a huge issue with me. I have a fifth grader and a fourth grader. So you want to talk Common Core, you want to talk about what's happening in the classrooms. I live and breathe it every day as a parent, like so many other parents across the state. I'm one of the few candidates out there that can talk at, again, the frontline level. What's happening in our classrooms? How is the policy out of Concord really impacting our kids? You need that experience and that perspective in the corner office, and that's what I'm trying to bring to the table.
Okay, Chris, you brought that up, and I had done a post back in March when you did your op-ed in the Union Leader about the contract that was being brought forward to the Executive Council. And one of the things that I've noticed is that, do you guys get a chance to read all this stuff? And you did put up an effort to say, look, we can't vote on this. Nobody's had the chance to read it. And for that, I'll applaud you. But I did put up a post, and I took an issue with some of the stuff that you said. So I'm going to ask, just to set the table, on that contract, did you vote to go ahead and approve that contract?
Sure. Well, just to be clear, are we talking about the Smarter Balanced approval, the approval of Smarter Balanced testing? Is that what we're referencing?
That is correct. Where basically you had to accept the tests, or you were going to risk over $250 million in federal funding. Because I took exception to that, and I'd like to explore that, because I see it's part of the big problem that we have here in the state of New Hampshire.
Well, I agree with you. I am not a fan of Common Core. Again, I see it in my kids' classrooms every day. When my kids come home and tell me day after day how they're practicing for a test, there's nothing educational about that. Not just for a few days, but for weeks and weeks on end. And this Smarter Balanced test that the state has subscribed to has been dropped by many states. It doesn't work. It is not based around the core curriculum that should be in our classrooms, and I'm strongly opposed to it. Now, the governor and her administration brought us a contract 9 months late. 9 months late, while we're already into the testing. And I said, look, I hate Smarter Balance, and I know it. I know it better than most people in Concord because, again, I'm living it every day. And I said, we're going to end this thing. And some folks at the United States Department of Education contacted us and said, just so we're clear, if you pull this test because it's so last minute and you don't design a new test, you will have no time to design a test, you are risking $200 to $250 million in funding for the state of New Hampshire. And I called our Department of Education. I talked to the governor about it. I said, is this true? They said, it's absolutely true. So now we're stuck in a game of chicken, political chicken, with, again, taking the Smarter Balance test or risking $250 million out of our schools. I will not do that. Wow. I will not do that. This governor was absolutely asleep at the wheel, and they left us with absolutely no choice. The alternative and the better solution is to say we're going to design our tests by our teachers based on our curriculum for our kids. A lot of states are going that way, and that's the way we need to go in this state.
Here's the post that I wrote, and it said, Chis Sununu's words are, in my humble opinion, a bit strange. And, I looked at that phrase that you just said. the state has been put into a position of having to accept these tests and standards because of the $250 million. The Common Core and everything associated with is a real hot button issue with a lot of the conservatives here in the state of New Hampshire. Sure. And I look at this, and on that phrase, I said, I wrote, the last time I looked, New Hampshire was a sovereign state. The whole idea of federalism is pinned on this principle. Let's cut out the crap and just say it. Why does New Hampshire have to accept these standards? And frankly, I looked at this as, all right, the money was more important than the freedom to set our own standards. And I see that we are enthralled. When you look at our budget, and this is going to come up during the race for governor, most of our budget, we are beholden to the federal government.
Absolutely.
Anyways.
You've hit it right on the head.
So I look at this and I go, if it was that important to not have the Smarter Balance test, when you voted for it, it looked like, from reading your words and looking at the action, the $250 million was more important than saying we will just go our own way from the federal government and no longer be beholden to them.
Well, yes. No, again, you got to understand what's going on. The $250 million is really money we've already accepted for the current school year we're in. We would have to actually hand that money back. It's money we've already spent.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't have that. We wouldn't even have that, and you're going to cause chaos within the school system. I'm not one that believes in shutting down government. I'm not one that believes in throwing a complete monkey wrench into the system just to do it. So what we said was very clear to the Department of Education. You have until September or October of this coming year to come back with options. Maybe it's an Iowa test. Maybe it's an option that looks at our teachers designing our own test, which I believe very strongly in. So we said we're going to approve this because we're not going to put our children and our education at risk for the next couple of months. But over that time period, you need to come back to us and show us a plan of how we're going to move on beyond from Smarter Balance. And the Department of Education very clearly said, we completely understand, we agree, and we're going to get that done. So they have until September to come back to us and show us a plan that gives us options. It's something, again, this governor has no sense of leadership. Leadership is looking at options, weighing the variables out one way or the other. This governor is so politically bent and so absent at doing anything other than running for the U.S. Senate that her departments have no leadership. They have no guiding principles. And so the council has set some of those principles in place over the next few months to right the ship. Now, maybe this is where you and I disagree. I'm not going to play that game of chicken with our kids. I'm just not going to do it. Not over just a couple months of schooling that we have left in this year. We need to set those leadership principles, hold them accountable, create accountability within our own Department of Education, and let them come back with options and see where we can go from there. We've made our stance very clear on the council. We don't want to see this again. We need options, and that's what I fully expect that they'll bring us in the next couple months.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate on that and say you're saying the governor was asleep at the wheel and let this happen. I am suspecting that you were maneuvered into that corner, that it was deliberate that no plan was presented, and that you were left with the choice of accept it or
I think that's very possible.
Or put the money at risk. So
yeah, I think that's very possible.
So putting it the other way around, let me take at face value for a moment that you have made strong demands of the Department of Education and that you believe they will comply. What are the teeth in that? In that strongly worded.
Well, again, if we come back in September or October, we can. If they were to come back and say, well, here's where the testing contract needs to be, and they come back again with Smarter Balanced or one of these other ridiculous tests designed by bureaucrats in Washington and PhDs in California that have nothing to do with New Hampshire, then we simply say no, and we actually will have time. See, if we killed the contract early in the school year, we have 6 months, 7 months to design our own test. The problem is, and to your point, did they do it intentionally? Maybe. I don't know, but I have the exact same suspicions that you do. But when they come and bring that to us in March, we're right in the middle of the testing phase, and that's where we don't meet the federal mandate. The most important aspect of this discussion is the concept of local control. It is something that I cherish. I know you guys cherish. People across the state cherish. It's one of the fundamentals that makes New Hampshire so different, right? And that New Hampshire advantage that we talk about that has been eroded away. Do we still have it? Let me tell you, anyone who thinks we truly have local control like we used to, we don't. We don't. That Washington, D.C. is pulling the strings on Concord. And, again, I'm running to push back, to create some shakeup in Concord, to do it our way. But you can't get that done until you have the corner office in this state. The legislature is the most powerful political body we have. But at the end of the day, all that work is for naught if you don't have a leader that's creating, again, guiding principles, a focus, and a plan for the state that's looking long-term instead of these 2-year chunks and playing political games that we've seen. We need to kick Washington out of New Hampshire once and for all. We need to bring those mandates back to our control, not their control, and restore it back to the cities and towns that frankly do it best. When New Hampshire does it New Hampshire's way, we do it better than anybody else.
Okay.
Anybody else.
I get it. Skip first.
Chris, and this education policy, I mean, it really brings into focus what should be happening here in the state. And I'm going to ask, I mean, I love the debate. I wish we could have you here in studio and we could do the whole 2 hours
Anytime,
and hash it
sure.
all out, maybe
Yeah.
in a couple of weeks. But here's the deal. It's one thing to say the federal government is mandating that the state of New Hampshire is doing such and such, and you didn't have enough time. Well, again, going back, if we are a sovereign state under federalism, we should be able to tell the government, no, we're not going to do it your way. And basically, like a lot of other states and a lot of other policy areas saying, go screw. But I also see a problem with the Department of Education here. Now, I'm assuming that you're familiar with the Croydon issue with the Board of Education.
I talk about it day after day. I think Croydon is a perfect example of where the state has gone wrong and where, frankly, the leadership out of the governor's office has gone wrong.
And I look at it as a former budget committee member in my town, and hearing, well, the state mandates this, state mandates that, and all of this, and I keep thinking of Article 28 in the Constitution that says, well, if there's a mandate from Concord that carries a cost, the local citizenry can say, no, we're not going to do that. That's the ultimate local control. Mm-hmm. So what is it that you're going to do to rein in at the state level to let the local towns have more authority, basically devolve power out from outside of Concord?
We are in lockstep on this concept. First of all, we're not going to have an attorney general, a governor that sends an attorney general after a small town like Croydon, just to sue them. Again, just to rehash for those who may not know, to sue them because the town and the locals have made a choice to send their kids to a certain school. Just fundamentally, I think we all agree. I don't care where your kid wants to go to school, homeschool, private school, public school, charter school program. I don't care. The parents have the ultimate say in where the child must go to school. And that concept can only get back to the town with leadership out of the governor's office that believes in those principles, that doesn't mind shaking things up in the Department of Education, and frankly, more importantly, the Board of Education in the state, which is a very powerful board, and that, again, just has no leadership and no concept. It's like a rudderless ship floating out there that talks out of both sides of their mouths when you're talking about school choice and equal opportunity in education. But you have a governor that doesn't go out and find ways to solve problems. When something comes at her that she doesn't like, she sues them. That isn't leadership. That's the antithesis of leadership. You need a governor that will drive down to Croydon, sit down with those folks, try to work out a solution. Technically, was what they were doing against with some of the statutes that had been put in place? It may have been, but you know what you do? You go and change the statute. You go and find solutions. Don't tell me what you can't do. Impress me with what you can do. That is a philosophy I live by. It's something I run my businesses by, and that's a philosophy I'm going to bring to the state. What can we do for the people of the state? Get out of this concept and mindset of, well, we have to prevent folks from doing things. That goes back to the overregulation you see in these businesses. You know, we have, and not to change the topic, but it really is kind of interconnected. We have become a state where we say no to people first. Prove to us that you've earned the right to do something on your property. Prove to us you've earned the right to make a choice for your children. That is an appalling concept to me. That is not the New Hampshire I grew up in. And you hear it in my voice. I get passionate. I get excited about this stuff because I know we can do better. I know the solutions are out there, but they cannot come unless you have the governor's office, and you can't govern unless you win.
I got it, and at least we can pass legislation with majorities if we have the governorship. There was something that came up when Ovid was running, and it was about education, and it was about the federal funds, because they have these funds and they force us to provide certain accommodations to provide, for example, disability accommodation above and beyond what is actually reasonable and necessary, and then they say they're going to kick in 40% of the cost, and it becomes 17%.
Special ed.
Special ed, Skip says. Why don't we just tell them we're not going to comply, and you can keep your damn 17%? We'll save that much money by designing a better program.
If we can design a better program, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you brought up a great example. This I think the special ed legislation came up back in the late 70s, maybe 80s, and it was that, they're very famous because the government completely reneged on the financial obligations, yet have consistently piled on and on more and more mandates and regulations, frankly, to the point where parents can't understand it. I don't know if you know, my wife was a special ed teacher for many, many years until she got so frustrated with the system and the complexities of the system, and the point that she was the only one that understood the system in the room, she actually went and became an advocate for parents. And again, I use her example as a great example of we need to start fighting for parents. We need to start fighting for the locals. We need to start fighting for ourselves. Does anyone have any confidence of what comes out of Washington now? I mean, literally, almost anything that comes out of Washington, with the exception of the military, I have very, very little confidence in.
Yeah. Hey,
and
Chris.
New Hampshire, yeah.
Chris, I'm sorry to do this, but we've got about 2 minutes left.
Oh, sure.
I'm going to give you the invite. You're welcome to come in, not next week, but anytime after that. We can give you the whole 2 hours. Just know that we're going to play devil's advocate because there's a lot of discontent in the conservative side here in the Republican Party or in the Liberty and Freedom Movement, and there's a lot to be discussed. I've always been the idea of let's do the discussion in the arena of ideas, and I would want to give you the entire 2 hours to defend where you stand and get your message across.
No, that would be great. That would be great.
If somebody wants to go see what you're doing right now, where would they go?
Yeah, so I have a website up, ChisSununu.com. You can see what's happening either on the campaign or even on the council. My cell number is on there. My email is on there. I really encourage everyone to reach out. Even if it's not, I'd love for everyone to get directly involved with my campaign. But if you have questions, New Hampshire is all about accessibility. Public service is about accessibility and transparency. It's a fundamental difference that we have amongst other states. Call me, email me, give me your questions, give me the critiques. I love the debate. I really do. And whether it's with conservatives or hardcore liberals, I'm always willing to jump in the arena and have the discussion. We may not agree on every last detail. My wife will be the first one to tell you that. But at the end of the day, low taxes, limited government, local control, those are the fundamental basis for a lot of what we're trying to achieve here. I'm a strong fiscal conservative. I've run a business, and we're trying to bring that type of expertise and leadership into the corner office. If we do it, we're going to make a difference. So you can go to ChisSununu.com, find out what we're doing, and hopefully join the team. Okay, Chris, thank you very much for coming on. We'll hopefully see you in 2 or 3 weeks. Folks, this is Grok Talk, a production of GraniteGrok.com and CNHT. We thank all of our guests, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Steve McDonald here. You want proof that Democrats are evil? Well, just look at the Democrats' Obamacare contraceptive mandate. Federal government trying to force religious organizations like Little Sisters of the Poor and Priests for Life to make chemical abortions administratively available to any woman who works for them, even though it violates their religious conscience and they consider it to be murder. At the same time, the Obama administration has provided, without much if any fight, the very same exemptions these religious groups want to organizations like Visa, Pepsi, and even Exxon. Religious groups have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to take their case to the Supreme Court, and Exxon gets a pass. That's right, a big evil oil company gets an exemption, and Democrats don't even like them. Like I said, Democrats are evil. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Grok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
In accordance with Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, some of the material in this program is used under the Fair Use provision of federal copyright law. Sound effects were either created by the producers of the program, found free in the public domain, or are covered under Attribution 3.0. Most of the music on this program comes courtesy of Creative Commons licensing from Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteRock.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter.